So I am going to sort of really, sort of talk about a little bit of the book. But first, I'm going to do a brief backstory, and it's sort of like a quick journey through my childhood to give a little context as to why I am really passionate about, upcycling, recycling, being sustainable, thoughtful, mindful about water and resources. So what you see is the house that, one of the houses that I grew up in. And my dad basically built this house out of all recycled materials. So it was recycled stained glass, windows, doors, redwood, absolutely everything. And this, I'm not sure if some people know Cascade Canyon, but it was in Mill Valley in Cascade Canyon. And this picture is actually from Life magazine. And it made Sunset Home of the Year, I think in like 71 or something. And so that was sort of like my introduction into the world. And then so this picture is quite incriminating, but revealing. So in our next house, the journey with my creative father, who basically made everything possible. So that couch that you see there, he made using old ties and pieces from thrift stores, and then the footstools you see in front of us. He got all that from thrift stores. What else? The masks. When I look at that now, I feel like we're in some like hippie witness protection program. But and I don't know why we're all wearing masks, but apparently for Halloween, maybe we would all wear masks. And I'm the mouse in the middle. I think I'm trying to hide or something. But so what this, when it's sort of like in your blood and you grew up in, sort of this creative hippie culture, and you have, a brick in your toilet to save water. And that's just sort of the norm. There's almost no way you can avoid this, this sort of the sensibility of being creative. And so that was sort of my dad. And then my mom was the gardener. And so her third house, they had property in Pengrove, and my mom made this massive garden, and it actually won the Golden Trowel for garden design in Garden Design magazine. And so this is sort of an example of how in the garden they brought in whimsy, right? So this is like the Wizard of Oz house sort of being, blown over by a tornado. And so the pillars, those are recycled galvanized material. And, there was definitely recycled aspects brought into this garden as well. And so it was sort of like, architecture meets garden. And my mom also was definitely an avid gardener, and, always stuffed my pockets with seeds wherever we went. And so, sort of grew up always having mystery seeds in my pocket and, not knowing what to do with them. So upcycling. So, this is sort of one thing that I touch on in my book, which now you can sort of see why I like this topic. And so I sort of define it, which is upcycling is an artistic action in which interesting new items are created from old or discarded items. And so this notion, definitely comes into play, especially in my own garden, but when I'm designing new gardens, if it fits, if it's the right sort of client and the right garden, then I definitely try to be mindful of that. So how do you upcycle? So I start by going to garage sales, flea markets, swap meets. You can look on Nextdoor. And then I don't know if anyone has ever been to Urban Ore in the East Bay. I grew up going there all the time, and just scrounging around and looking for things. And actually on my list now is I'm looking for an old mattress frame, like the circular kind, because I went to a man's garden in the East Bay, and he had put, you can look on my Instagram, but he put air plants in it. and it is the most fabulous thing. And so I'm like, I need an old mattress. And so I'm hoping that just by putting it out in the ether, I will drive by and on the street, I will find it and stick it in my minivan. I'm hoping. But back to that. So, the biggest thing is you don't want your garden looking like a flea market. So you don't want to crowd it with too many items. So, you need to be a little bit reserved and only choose things that, really speak to you and that sort of work together. And then sort of like you do a spring cleaning of your closets, you do a spring cleaning of your garden and see like, gosh, that recycled wind chime is just completely rusty now. And it's like, you move this stuff out. And then that way it's sort of, if you move stuff out, then you can bring new things in. And once it's been recycled once, you can be comfortable letting it go and not feeling like you're adding to the landfill. But then, I'm always about, like, in my book, you'll find I throw in lots of tips. And one of them is that, saving money on these recycled items shouldn't put your health at risk. And so just be aware that, when you go to these places, that you want to make sure that you're not bringing in, toxic metals, weird lead paint, and especially if you're trying to make unique containers to grow food in. And so, railroad ties, creosote, pressure treated wood that's like really green and leaching, don't build veggie boxes out of that. Pallets, those are trickier. A lot of people like to reuse pallets, but chemicals could have been stored on them and they could have leached into the wood. And so, if you can do any sort of back history on those sorts of things. And if you really want to be like OCD, you can carry a lead paint detector when you go, hunting around. And I know for a while, at least for me, recycled horse troughs, those Galvy horse troughs everyone was using, I was getting all stressed about leaching of those. And so I would be super curious to hear in the comments and questions how everyone feels on that, because I've been trying to do my research and it's like, some people are like, oh no, a little bit of, what is it, iron or, some metal is okay that it leaches in. And some people put drain cloth, some people paint them. And I'm not really sure where I stand on them. I think they're a great recycled option for planting. Like if you're going to plant, we used to plant bamboo in them because it was contained. But I know a lot of people want to grow veggies because it looks modern and clean. But let's go back and talk about that later. So why should we upcycle? I think because it's creative, and I think it transforms items and makes them better than what they were sometimes. And it taps into a different side of your creativity. And of course, it saves money. It personalizes your space and makes it your own garden. And, I think it's so hard, with social media now, as everyone's seeing all these gardens and they're like, I want it to look like that. And people are trying to, they're Pinteresting it and they're like, that's what I want. And it's like, you can pick and choose little bits, but it's like, really, it's about your personal taste, your house style, your local environment, your budget, right? And also, what you can invest in maintenance, right? So if you're going to do it yourself, right, it's like you've got to, you have to match your garden to your level. And then, of course, by upcycling and recycling, it reduces that goes into the landfill and, of course, making more materials. So this is one of my favorite gardens that if people haven't been to in Berkeley, you have to go. So at most Sundays, sort of like on the cross between Berkeley and Oakland, Marcia Donahue's garden, it is open for everyone. And so what you see here is bowling balls recycled as mulch or a ground cover, right? And then it's hard to tell, but the pavers, there's horseshoes in them, but I didn't get a picture of it. But if you go to the right and you walk that path, she was at the dump, and they were dumping tombstones, like headstones. And she's like, what are you doing with them? And they're like, oh, we're going to throw them away. This was a long time ago. So she took them and she made them into pavers, which completely unique and creative. And so her whole garden, I think, so to the right is her sculpture. She does ceramic sculptures of like sort of bamboo totem poles. And when you go to her garden, you can see her artwork. But it's like, there's so much reused material in her garden. And it's very, very inspiring to go see. And it's a plant wonderland if you like the super jungly look. And I can put up her address later or give it to you and that Jen, and then you can put it up.
Yeah, what I was going to say too that I like about it is that it's not a billion different colors. Like she's chosen the green and the burgundy accent, and I think that's kind of cool with the bowling balls and everything.
Well, totally. Like it picks up the fuchsias, right? And so, and then and like it's not like it's an explosion of color,
right?
And so that's totally good noticing, because that even though you're introducing so many elements, it all works together. And
so then it doesn't look like junky or anything. It looks like intentional.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's an artful eye. I mean, that doesn't usually happen overnight. It's like you have to nuance a garden like this. Or you're waiting for that other green pot, or you're like, hey, how do I pick up that fuchsia color? I mean, my biggest thing that I like to tell people is that, a garden is never done. It should never be done, and it's like, it's definitely the journey, and the process and not the product. And, Marsha, she's been working on this for eons. So, it's just, it's working your way through the little areas.
I have to visit it. I've never heard of it. So
oh my God, it's fabulous. Yeah, Sundays. And so then this is the guy that has the mattress stuffed with air plants. So he invented this idea of taking trash can lids, and he puts cactus soil, and then he has his bromeliads and his like rickrack cactus in there. And so he just hangs them from his little covered porch. And I was like, that's such a creative way to make a planter that looks it's like, it's kind of funky, but kind of, modern. And his garden, as you can see by the green house paint, it's sort of, you can get an idea of what his garden looks like. But, it's a little tropical, and it's like, just these little simple additions can totally just like add a different element. And I was totally surprised to see that. And that's his garden's in Berkeley too. That's not an open garden, but so this is my own garden, part of it. So I was driving down Camino Alto, and I saw this massive bird cage, and I was like, I have to have this. So I called my husband. I was like, you have a truck. I need you to pick this up for me. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I just knew I had to have it. And so I've been like playing around with, you can see, weird, all those pots are completely from flea markets. I've got bones I found on the beach, and there's a Hoya and an orchid and a crazy Tillandsia. And so, it's like, it makes me happy. And I just made it for myself. And, I would never try to tell a client to put a bird cage, an old rusty bird cage in their garden, unless they wanted it. But, it's those little things. And, I just keep changing it and altering it and putting little treasures in there. And And the fun thing too, it's like, it was free. So it's like, it's slowly leaning a little bit, which, you know, I'm sure it's just rusting apart, but, you know,
I love it.
it's just for me. And this is a garden that I went to, Fiber Shed. I don't know if anyone has ever been out there. It's in, I think, Point Reyes. Look them up if you don't know Fiber Shed. It's amazing. But this is the door to their kitchen garden, and you can see at the top there's scissors that are used as the latch, and then there's like driftwood, and there's a saw, and then somewhere else there's a trowel on the other side of the door. I think there's a trowel that's used as the handle, and you know, it was just sort of like interesting little aspect that when I walked, I was like, wow, like, you know, the whole garden isn't that way. It's just this one door is just sort of this expression of recycling and upcycling that when I went there, I was like, I don't know, I kind of like that. And so, you know, and there's a lot of ideas in my book, if you check it out. I just pulled just a few just to sort of give you an example. And so like, this is a little garden, you know, probably a garden shed that, you know, you paint it and you can turn it into a kid's playhouse. You know, so there's even bigger items that you can also sort of rethink and repurpose and sort of give it a new life, you know, just so that we're not all being, you know, super duper wasteful and, you know, just tearing everything out and starting over. I think, you know, taking pause and really looking at what we have and, you know, and what can be saved feels important to me. And so, you know, here's another example how, you know, you can take, you know, a discarded mirror, and just by putting it up on a wall and having that reflective image, you know, you can totally transform a space, and it doesn't look like you've got something, you know, like you picked it up on the side of the road, like my bird cage. You know, it could look like you got it, like, I don't know, Restoration Hardware or something, you know, so not everything has to look totally funky, you know, you can sort of match it to your taste. I always like that picture of like the different bricks and the materials being you know, just a charming path in a vegetable garden. You know, I think there's, you know, if you want to like squeeze in something that's kind of unique, you know, maybe you can, and you don't feel quite comfortable embracing that world, you can, you know, put it somewhere where not a lot of people walk, you know, and it's just for you. And so, you know, by putting that in a vegetable garden, you know, it's a little Beatrix Potter to me. I don't know why. Another thing I grew up with. But, you know, and there's the palette, you know, putting that up, painting it, putting your tools in it, you know, turning a palette into just like a quick little side table, you know, is an interesting thing to do as well. And, you know, it's like you buy some caster wheels, right? And that's, you know, not a huge investment. And, you know, maybe you make it a family project, you know, painting it and assembling it. And then, you know, it's more than just going to, you know, the village and picking up something. So this is at my client's house, and it's a grate from a garage. And so he had it powder coated, and he put it up on his wall, and it's like, now it's a piece of art. And so, you know, it really complements a bare wall. And then we have the Myers fern underneath, sort of like little spiking up. And so, you know, his house is the exact opposite of anything that's like funky and crafty. You know, it's super modern, on the water, but yet he's incorporated something that you know, is mindful. Or you can go, you know, super crafty, do stuff with kids, like I'm saying, with making plant tags in a variety of different ways. And then this is kind of cool. This is bamboo. You know, a lot of people are removing their bamboo now. And so if you cut your bamboo, you can paint it. And then this person used it as a fence. And then, you know, it's not going to last for forever, but, you know, maybe if you used a durable, some sort of durable paint. I'm not a paint expert, but something that would preserve it better. And then I love it with the Verbena bonariensis, you know, sort of like elbowing its way through it and sort of, I don't know, makes it sort of carefree. And it's like, you could, you know, you do that for a while and then, you know, you get tired of it or it rots or whatever. And then, you know, you've done something with the bamboo and given it, you know, another life. And so these are just some other sustainable ideas. Propagate your own plants from root cuttings or water rooting. On my counter right now, I've got a bunch of like water rootings of like a fuchsia and a geranium, just to see if I can make more plants from them. I grew many avocados from the pits on the counter. That's always fun. Sharing and swapping plants with friends. I like to do that. And it helps if you have friends that are gardeners too, because then you don't sound weird trying to give away plants. Divide your plants. I like to do that in the spring or the fall, like daylilies and cannas and ornamental grasses. Get free mulch delivered from tree companies, and PG&E is a good sort of money saving thing that you can do. You know, just always ask them if they know what the tree was that they cut down, just to make sure it's not something that's like too acidic for what your purposes are. So this is a recent one for me. So went to a client and we removed their lawn, and I was like, hey, if you put cardboard down, put some cardboard down, put mulch down, and then we'll talk, you know, in the fall, right? So he experimented with newspaper and cardboard, and he found that flattened bike boxes, that he basically went to the bike stores and they have so many boxes that they want to get rid of. He went there, they were like, here, just go back and take all of them. So he went, got those, flattened them and put those down and then used mulch. And he said it was like a game changer as opposed to like newspaper, which of course like flies all around, and thinner cardboard, which he said the weeds came back. So
that's a really cool tip.
That was the latest one. I was like,
yeah,
oh.
For sure.
Yeah. And, you know, right, you know, that's a perfect example of like doing something that, you know, I mean, it was going to be recycled, but now you get to recycle it and it's actually successful.
And it composts too into your
And
garden.
it composts. So, and I went there and I literally saw like his lawn that had like cheap cardboard and like, I think oxalis or something was going back through it. And then the area where it was the bike boxes, and it was like night and day.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm big on saving. See, I grew up, you know, during the drought, but saving my warm up water from the shower to water my plants. So I have a bucket in my shower and a big 5-gallon bucket, and we all fill it up. And then when it gets too heavy to carry, we huff it out and water plants. I'm a big supporter of putting in plants that work overtime and that multitask. And so, you know, when I'm thinking of plants, I'm always thinking of a plant that serves many purposes, right? And somehow I feel like that makes it that, I don't know, I feel better about that. So it's like, you know, a cut flower that reseeds, or something that's deer proof, but also drought tolerant, low maintenance, right? Like if it can check off boxes, I'm like, I feel successful. And then of course, you know, embracing low water plants. Even though we had so much rain, you know, we need to be thinking forward that it's, you know, it could be gone. So always being mindful of water. And these are some of my favorites. Grevillea with the spidery, leucadendrons, and leucospermums. And you can find all these at Sloat because I find them there and I buy them there. So, and yeah, they're just, you know, deer proof, check. Low water, check. Cut flower, check. Pollinator, check. Unique, right? Like it checks off all those boxes, which that works for me. So my things
And
are,
really pretty.
oh yeah, and they're really pretty. That's right. I know. I cut them all the time and bring them in.
They're
I have some
great for
proteas.
bouquets. I
What'd you
know.
say?
They're great for bouquets.
They're super. I have in right now in my house, I have leucospermums and leucodendrons in like bathrooms and kitchens and like,
Yeah.
yeah. And you have to cut them. Otherwise, they won't bloom as well. And so it's like, it's a win-win. So yeah, so my biggest thing, getting creative and thinking outside the box and, making your garden your own, and, asking for help if you need it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. So that's basically it.
This is so cool. And I'm super inspired. One thing that I was thinking, I noticed in a lot of your pictures, and I kind of commented on that one, is like, that the color, there's a lot of thought in sort of the colors of what they were using. Like even that bamboo was painted yellow, and then there was that yellow fennel with the verbena and things like that. I just went to a garden, I told the client, I said, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and there's maybe 5 gardens that have stuck out to me, and yours is one of them. And what she had done was incorporated, so her accent color was chartreuse, and so she had little salvage things, and it wasn't like a ton of stuff where it felt like junky, like you were saying. Like it was just more like a little cute salvage pot, and then there was like this watering can, and like, these little things that she had incorporated throughout it that just gave it this feel. And what I like about it too, as a designer, is I feel like they're all conversation pieces. Like it's not just some antiseptic garden that you walk into. It's like people are like, oh my gosh, is that a scissors? That's the lock on your gate, and it's like, it's like keeping something out of a landfill, and it's adding a little like artistic element and a conversation piece. And I just think it's super fun.
Yes,
So
I agree. And that's why, and I think, you can do a lot or a little, right? But it's like, if it brings you joy, it's like, put it in. It's basically, it's your garden.
I was just trying to look up the PG&E for mulch program. Is that, how did you do that? Is it, that's through their website?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I definitely have heard from my clients that the tree companies, they definitely have used that more. Because they want to dump it frequently.
Yeah. And also through the water department, there's a lot, like they were doing free sheet mulching for a while in Marin.
Right.
But that you just have to watch, the website, because it kind of comes and goes. I think they do these like promotional things or something for a little bit of time, but that's an incredible, if you catch it, do it, because they come out. The sheet mulching, if nobody knows, is what Kier was saying, where it's like you do a layer of cardboard and then compost and bark on top of it. It's like a lasagna. And it, as the cardboard suffocates whatever's growing underneath. So it's a great way to get rid of a lawn. And then as it does, it composts and conditions the soil. So it ends up just being an incredibly effective way to condition a large space.
With no chemicals.
Yeah, with no chemicals, and also like salvaging, boxes that are going to be recycled anyways and things like that. So, and I've actually found that it's been the most effective in terms of keeping weeds down too. Just doing that. I personally, and everybody that I talk to that asks me about weed block, the cloth, like I'm one of those gardeners that does not like weed block. You can probably ask 20 different gardeners and get 20 different opinions, but I think putting why not? If you've got Amazon boxes or you've got whatever, why not try the cardboard, lay it all around in your garden beds, put compost on top of it, and then bark, and then see how that works for you compared to weed block, because I've found it to be much more successful.
Yep. Yeah, the only time I use weed block is on pathways. Like
Right.
I cannot stand it when people put it in the garden beds.
Same.
Oh, it's a
Right.
nightmare.
A couple questions on affordable soil sources. I know that there is local compost. I mean, do you know of different sources?
I mean, we just do, Martin Brothers. We do, there's, it depends if you want like fancy soil. There's it's North Bay, sort of like on the way to Point Reyes. They do like composting soils with, I think, grapevines, I think. But that, I mean, yeah, that's the thing, is that soil, I mean, unless you make your own,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that would be the most economical, right? Start making your own compost. But I mean, I think the best thing for buying it local is you buy it in bulk, right? You don't go, no offense, slow, but you don't buy it in bags, right? You go and you buy a lot, right? And you store it or you share it with your friends, or you bag it yourself. You get those, they have those bags and you go and you bag it. That's really the most economical.
Right. I agree with that. And you can get, I mean, there is compost. They have like Martin Brothers, A&S at the Broadmoor Lumber. Like there's a lot of places like that locally.
Yep.
But you can also look, I mean, sometimes there is like local farmers that give away like chicken manure and things like that. I mean, so definitely, whether that's a next door post or, Craigslist or something like that, there's definitely those resources available. I do recommend bag soil for the planting holes. So if you're doing like a large space, get it bulk.
Exactly.
But it's nice to have a little bit more sort of specialized soil for whatever you're planting.
Yep.
And use it in the planting holes.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay. Weed block is terrible.
Is that what someone said?
Yeah. Dries out the soil as it gets clogged. Yeah. And it's also a really big pain to come in and plant more plants because you cut it and everything. Yeah. So homemade organic weed killer recipes you can suggest.
Ooh, well, I've definitely bought vinegar online, like the kind that you can only buy online. And we have put that, we've sort of like poured that on plants or weeds in the summer, and let the sun sort of cook it. And that does help. I'm so anti basically anything that's toxic that I'm just like you either got to dig it out, scrape it out, pull it out, whatever method. But I think the other alternative is basically the hardcore vinegar.
But yeah, I agree. And I also I think that there's what we're trying to shift a little bit in a lot of these webinars is the fact that there's no such thing as a perfect garden. I mean, you can't have a weed-free garden. You can't have a bug-free garden. Like you can't, and so sort of like the tolerance level, we need to adjust a little bit because the weed is going to be food for something.
Exactly.
And yeah. And so it's like, it's a perfect system if sort of left untouched by us. So I think that I think just in general, I think people are getting more conscious of that, more conscious of organic gardening and native plants and stuff like that. So, if you have a couple weeds, it's not a big deal. You don't have to run out and get a massive weed killer,
Exactly.
You can pull it out or leave it for something to eat or whatever.
Yep. Or you hire, some local kids, and have them weed.
Totally. Yeah.
Just hand do it. But after a rain, it's so much easier. Right? You just sort of time it.
Definitely. And one last question. This is a little bit more specific, but the best affordable ground cover is tried Diamondia as a lawn alternative, but it died. What do you think? What do you like to use?
A lot of people are using Lipia, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if anyone wants to chime in on that, if they've had success with that.
I
Have you?
love it. I've used it in designs. I think it's
Yeah,
really cool. It's not quite as walkable as Diamondia.
yeah,
What I've been suggesting is, well, with anything, it's price per square foot. That's what you're always trying to factor.
right.
And I've been using native sod like crazy.
Like the Nomo fescue,
The Nomo fescue, because you can buy it in a carpet that you roll
right?
out and it's $2.75 a square foot.
Yep, agreed.
And you can have it, and it's just as drought tolerant once it's established as any other drought tolerant plant. They've got a much deeper root system, so it's not
Yep.
like a traditional lawn.
Yep.
Anyway, well, I'm super inspired. I love going to the salvage yard. It's a little bit overwhelming for me because I see everything as a container,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like I have to just rein it in a little bit. But
Yeah.
I think I love all your ideas and your pictures, and I love that house that your dad built, the windows. I'm so obsessed. Is it still there?
So it burnt down part of it.
Oh no.
A part of it burnt down, but you can still drive down Cascade and see it.
Mhm.
There's, the structure is there. The stained glass there's not much stained glass anymore. And they sort of tried to clean it up a little bit. Definitely not as funky. But yeah, you can actually, if you Google John Holmes Cascade House Life magazine or something, you can see more pictures.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's definitely from an era. And a Mill Valley. If anyone is from Mill Valley, you'll totally understand. But
Well, I'm sure you're making your parents proud here, carrying on the tradition, salvage tradition.
I think, well, my mom would be like, why'd you show them that picture? Right? The witness protection one.
It's really cool. Kier, thank you so much
Thank
for sharing all
you.
these ideas. This has been a super fun class, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.